Hello and welcome to Masters of Divinity. I'm your moderator, JP, and I'm here as always, Father Chark.
Yo.
And Father Fun.
Hey.
And occasional Matt is not here with us at the moment, but he should be showing up at the end just to let us know what his pick will be for next week, because he's going to be the next one. And then after that,
he'll be occasional in the episode.
yeah. And then after that, the Wheel of Mayhem awaits us.
Oh, I'm so excited for the Wheel of Mayhem.
Yeah. Cool. So, just kind of jumping into things. First of all, guys, how are you doing? How's everyone doing? Are we getting through this Music Mayhem okay?
I'm getting through Music Mayhem okay. I guess this is going to be Music Junehem for everybody. But still mayhem for us. We're good. We just moved away from my in-laws where we were staying in between houses, and we're in our house in Topeka, Kansas now, which so it was good. It was a good week. So I'm in a new place, trying to figure out where the best place to be for recording is, and half expecting my kids to bust in at any point because they don't realize what off limits means. So we'll see.
Bad at boundaries, children are.
Yeah, very much Yoda. Very much.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting through it fine. I've found a rhythm of editing the episode, listening to next week's album, as well as doing some analysis and doing promotional stuff for the episodes. So I found a nice little rhythmic balance, if that makes any sense.
I've been getting lots of Warner Music Group takedown notices on my phone. So I know when you are posting all kinds of stuff. I think we've gotten like 3 or 4.
Oh no!
But I'm pretty sure they're all related to Nirvana. I don't know that we've gotten any for Guster.
Okay,
but they have a pretty liberal like taping policy.
Yeah.
Like they want their stuff out there.
Oh well. At least they got some people to look at them before they were taken down. Nirvana.
I was speaking of copyright takedown type stuff. Maybe we should take a moment to acknowledge our new theme song.
Oh yes, I want to give a shout out to. If you've been watching and listening, you'll probably notice that we have a slightly different theme song. Eric from the YouTube channel 331 E-Rock was gracious enough to let us use one of his covers of his cover of the Masters of the Universe theme, which is called Metal Meets Masters of the Universe, and like he actually does like a whole medley of like He-Man and stuff, like metal versions of it. It's actually really cool. Very talented dude. Love his work. Visit his YouTube channel. He's got a lot of cool stuff up. He also has like his own album on iTunes and stuff. So check it out. So
excellent. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Have you guys been enjoying the new theme?
I have.
I do really like it.
Cool.
And I thought that using it at the beginning of Music Mayhem was a good time to kick it off.
Yeah. Well,
especially since it was Nirvana.
I told him it was just going to be from Music Mayhem, so it's not like our permanent theme. And also, it helps because, like, and this is kind of like inside baseball copyright stuff, but the Bill Conti theme that we've been using for the show does not show up on YouTube's copyright claiming system on Content ID, just because, it comes from Canon Films, which is a horrible production company. So, like, they probably just didn't take the initial steps to copyright it for, YouTube purposes. But the one that this dude produced, that one is copyrighted. So, even though we have his permission to use it in our graces, and his graces to use it, it's still recognized by Content ID, and we can't really make money off of it. Meanwhile, we can make money off the Bill Conti official theme music from the movie Masters of the Universe.
Wait, that's funny. I mean, I remember when we first started this, I was digging around looking for like who owns what.
Yeah.
And it's a very big question over who actually owns the rights to the Masters of the Universe live action movie starring Dolph Lundgren and Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
And Tom Paris. And I will say, and I've said it before, the theme song to the theme to that movie is so much better than it deserves.
It is. It's because it's done by Bill Conti. Bill Conti did the Rocky theme and the Karate Kid score.
It's so darn good.
Great composer.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that's my Mr. Miyagi thing.
You're gonna heal up a knee.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into it. Last week, Father Fun chose our album, which was Ceremonials by Florence and the Machine. A very interesting pick. And I want to get into why he chose that album.
Yeah, so this year's Music Mayhem was is favorite bands, and my favorite band of all time is The Who, but I'd already picked a Who album a few Music Mayhems ago. And so I was trying to think about what to do instead of just doing another Who album, which would have been fine. And Charles kind of had the idea actually of naming Florence and the Machine as my second favorite band, which I guess they probably are. I don't know. I don't have as encyclopedic a knowledge of them and all of that, but I really do love their music. My history with the band. So anyway, I picked Ceremonials because it's the album that I'm most familiar with, that I've listened to kind of all the way through, multiple times, too many to count. I have all four of their main studio releases, and their most recent one just came out, at the end of last year, and we really like it. I really like it. But Florence the Machine is a band that my whole family really likes, and their music videos are weird and very artistic and artsy, and my daughter really loves to watch her and watch them. There's lots of kind of interesting dancing in them, and so we just as a family we just listened to a lot of Florence and the Machine. So I decided to pick Ceremonials because it was the one I was most familiar with, and that's probably because I have right after we moved back to Kansas after seminary. Ceremonials came out right around when we were graduating from seminary in 2011. She had a world tour, and she came to Kansas City, and we went to see her before either the kids were born. In October of 2012, we went to see her at an outdoor concert, and so it was the Ceremonials tour, and so it was almost the entire album, and it was just a really incredible experience. And similar to what I said last week about Guster, Florence and the Machine is a band that I think I knew sort of from popular music. The main song off of her first album, which is called Lungs, the song The Dog Days Are Over, got pretty popular when she first came out, and I think she may have won Best New Artist. They may have won Best New Artist at the MTV VMAs that year. Huh. And I was familiar with Dog Days Are Over because, again, a very weird music video. And I remember my little sister sharing it with me back in 2009 or whenever that song came out. Yeah. So I knew of Florence and the Machine, but when Michael got tickets for us to go with some friends to see them in concert, we downloaded the latest album and just listened to it on repeat. And so that's why I'm so familiar with Ceremonials. And I just really love it. I thought that it would be a good album for us to talk about because she's a female singer, obviously, who we weren't having any women this year yet, and so I thought that would be good for us to talk about. And I just really love her lyrics. Often don't make a ton of sense to me, but they're evocative still, and I think that it's an album that kind of lends itself to conversation, especially she uses a lot of religious imagery, and I'm not exactly sure what her specific kind of religious background or kind of where she stands with religion right now. And I could read it into it either direction, but that kind of stays with her in her albums as she goes. Even though her latest is obviously, 9 years after this one, and she's more mature, it has kind of more mature themes. There's still a lot of religious imagery, both in the video portions of her work and in the audio portions of her work. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about it. I want to, evangelize Florence and the Machine as much as I can. So, cool. Yeah. So one of the things that I really love about Florence and the Machine and Florence Welch specifically is I'm really a sucker for female rock musicians.
Me too, man.
who
you and me both,
who have a huge range of kind of both dynamic and notes, I guess, you know, and like when I first heard Florence Welch sing, I immediately thought of Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship, and I thought of the White Rabbit, that main White Rabbit song that they sing, where it's just like this very like high pitches that are powerful, but not, but still pleasant to listen to, you know, like it's just like perfectly toned female vocals, I guess. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a big fan of Heart as well, and I think the same thing with Ann Wilson. Like they just like these women all have the ability to sing in a way that just like it just gets me, you know.
Did Heart do Barracuda?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So they Barracuda, Crazy on You, Magic Man, all that one. Yeah. Cool. It's that same kind of thing, that very powerful female voice. But I also think one of the things I really like about this album too, and it actually is interesting in how it relates to Guster in some ways, is that it's also an album that's about, you know, I watched an interview with her this week where she was talking about how this album came out, or she wrote most of these songs when she was in her early 20s, and so it was kind of an album of kind of like that those feelings of kind of like becoming an adult, mm-hmm. and the way that kind of her love life was starting to like interact with her in a different way now that she was in her 20s. And almost all these songs like are about relationships, I think, but they're more about like relationships with self and with kind of claiming identity and claiming adulthood.
Yeah.
I'm just always like I'm just always really impressed with it. I was watching one of the music videos this afternoon, and I read a comment that made me laugh. It said, "I've never felt more like a strong, independent woman despite being a 23-year-old male." I get that. Like when I listen to Florence and the Machine, I just am like, yes, like you rock, women rock. So I just love it, and I think it goes in this. It just goes up and down in a really pleasing way, and I said this with Guster as well, but like I'm a sucker for any song that has calm moments and then like huge swells and then like comes back into calm moments, and there's like every single Florence, that's like the Florence the Machine like playbook, and so it's just like every time it like breaks open, I'm just like, yeah, and then I'm like, yeah, no, we'll bring it back down, all right.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the Nirvana model too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Kurt
what
Cobain's
Nevermind
formula.
Was.
Yeah.
The
quiet
quiet versus loud chorus.
I was, as I was listening to it, I was like, man, like you can definitely tell again, this is like a post Nevermind kind of sound, you know, and then thematically it's similar to kind of what we were doing with Guster as well. I will say the other thing about it is that concert was just an amazing experience. Like I haven't gone to a ton of concerts, but it was probably the best concert I've ever been to. It was an outdoor theater, and she is just beautiful, like tall, and like has really long red hair, and she was wearing like a dress. And there's a song on this album called Spectrum that starts out kind of calm, and then it breaks open at the end, and or in the middle, and I have this memory of, this is right after we got back from Kansas. We just had our 3rd anniversary, and like I don't know, like 3 years into anything is like a time when you're kind of like going like, what the heck is happening? But I remember going to this show with Michael, and just like this breeze, it was October, but it was warm, but then like this breeze came in, and right at the like slow part of the song of Spectrum, her Florence's hair was like blowing and her dress was like blowing, and then they had this great light show. Like it just was a very affecting concert that has just always kind of stuck with me. And like anytime I listen to the album, I'm just like transported back there in a way that I, you know, am not whenever I listen to Bare Naked Ladies and I think about the Bare Naked Ladies concert I went to. You know, it's just like it was a spiritual experience in some ways.
It makes sense. The instrumentals are like massive.
Yeah.
So it's like perfect for like an outdoor symphony orchestra kind of thing going. Like I could see happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't, as I mentioned to you guys right before we started recording, I didn't unfortunately didn't have as much time to listen to this as I really wanted to. I mean, when I left from recording last week, I put this on and on my drive home. And as I said to you guys, I was leaving, I said, I've never listened to Florence and the Machine before, but that's not true. Because once Shake It Out played, I was like, oh, I know this song, because it was kind of everywhere for a while. I just didn't know it was Florence and the Machine. But the first impressions of this is, as you said, JP, massive. Like the instrumentation is massive. So there's this, so toward the turn of the decade there, end of the 2000s, beginning of the 2010s, there was within digital music, that was when digital music was really becoming the main format of things. There was this whole conversation around the loudness factor, this sense that people thought that if it was loud, it meant it sounded good, right? Until a lot of people criticized what was happening in digital recording because of that. But it led to this whole range, this trend in music, a lot of bands that were using these really big percussive sounds as the basis of their music. And so you have, Florence and the Machine, you have Fun, if you remember the band Fun. You had a little earlier than that, sort of precursor, I guess, to like Florence and the Machine, a very similar kind of sounding thing to me a little bit, was Emoji and Heap and Frou Frou, which is this female-led, somewhat electronic sounding music.
Are we just going to gloss over Evanescence?
Yeah, totally. But actually, I would put Evanescence a little bit different, because I just don't know that I would consider them as electronic sounding as some of these other. I mean, there's a weird thing with like Fun and Pompeii. Bastille and Florence and the Machine, where there's almost like an electronic quality to the music. Like it just like but what I like about it is, I know, like I said, music critics and others were criticizing that era because of how loud things were, but this sound like Florence is a band that utilizes it in a way that's very effective. You hear the resonance of the drumming. It doesn't sound like it's being piped through a synthesizer or some kind of digital effects work. It actually, you can hear the thing resonating in the room. It sounds like they're playing music in a big open space. So that's a great sound, and it's very uplifting. I mean, it was great to drive back from Waikiki, mostly Waikiki, drive through down Honolulu back to Hawaii Kai, where we live, and to just hear these big sounds as I'm like looking at the ocean, the mountains, because it just sort of fit. It was kind of hard driving in Hawaii listening to Nirvana, but like this worked, right?
To find a cave.
It made me think a little. Yeah, it kind of made me think a little bit like there's a band called M83, electronic-ish band, that they their whole musical thing is they try to create soundscapes. That's like their focus is, and I get that with Florence and the Machine, that they're a band, and like you said, Patrick, like you don't always understand the lyrics, but kind of like Nirvana, they're going for a feeling, and you get the feeling, and so like, I mean, these are just the things I was thinking about listening to it, and I really loved, like, it's funny that we talk about connections with Guster. The other thing is this sounds to me like a band that is very percussive, percussion driven.
Oh yeah.
That to me, those are the big sounds that I hear when I listen to this. I hear drums. The other thing is Florence Welch's vocals. There's this, again, going back to like music research that's been happening in recent years, running different popular musicians through computers to analyze their sounds. They found out that so many groups now sound the same, and that music just sort of sounds the same. They've become very formulaic for getting things on the radio. And one thing I think it's unfortunate about that is that there are a ton of female vocalists out there that sound indistinguishable. There's this kind of, if you're not doing pop music, you're sort of doing this almost whispery, like You're singing very much from your soft palate sound. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, Maggie Rogers, who I really like, is kind of guilty of this, even though I think she's very, very talented musician. I like her music, but I feel like there's this indie female vocalist sound that sort of, I don't know, it's just sort of, it's sort of a generic sound, kind of husky. I don't know. But Florence doesn't do that. That's the point I'm trying to make. This is someone who very clearly is is some kind of a trained singer who can, like, you know, actually sing. And I would imagine is that, you know, why that sort of thing stands out, because I think of Tori Amos, and reading about Florence the Machine, they made some connections with Tori Amos. Tori Amos is also a classically trained musician who also wrote a lot of music based off of religious imagery that also fit in with relationships and things like that. That there's like this pressure, I guess, probably more on women when women are into music. If they have any kind of training in their vocals, there's this expectation that they're going to go into theater, or they're going to go into classical music or things like that. They're not going to go into popular music. You know, and so to have someone like Florence, to have someone like Tori Amos or whatever on the scene, it stands out because it is just a different thing than what we're used to hearing. And I think it's a good thing for us to hear a very competent, trained, professional sounding female vocalist doing music that's playing on the radio. Because it's, you know, there's just that, like you said, that Patrick, that hearing it hits you in an emotional place that you don't get otherwise. Like you said, like, you know, it makes me feel like a strong, powerful woman, even though I'm a 23-year-old dude. You know, I get that. And so yeah, so I mean, that's my initial takeaway stuff listening to it, is just this ethereal soundscape sound with this beautiful, powerful vocals that just sounds big. You know, it just sounds big to me, and that's a good thing. It's not flat and loud. It is a dynamic bigness, and I think, you know, is a sound that's pretty indicative of a particular moment in time in popular music. And based off of when this album was released, it sounds like there were a lot of copycats of Florence's sound coming out of it. So thank you, Patrick, for the suggestion and for being introduced to this, because I plan on making this a regular part of my listening rotation.
You should add Lungs to that too, because it's really good. That's also a good one. Okay, so I listened to Lungs years ago, like around the time it debuted, which I think like 2009, right? And I really loved Lungs. You have like Cosmic Love, you have Dog Days Are Over, Rabbit Heart, Kiss of the Fist, Howl. I love those songs. Were like on a playlist I made that was just like in constant rotation, like in my early 2000 teens, I would say, making a long trek to work before I discovered podcasts, and music now doesn't exist anymore.
Same.
Well, I mean, pretty much anything recorded after like 2012 is garbage, right?
Yeah.
I haven't listened to any of it. I'm not sure. I
can't really tell you. I don't know. Tried.
Exactly.
It's not because we're old or anything. No. So no, I really enjoyed that album. I loved it, and I think I enjoyed it because of the diversity in all the songs. It's a very like kind of an indie pop art album. It's experimental. You know, she has this like really beautiful heavenly voice. It's like powerful, and so you could like you kind of risk the danger of like overpowering everybody around you, and like kind of the music kind of falls to the wayside. But like the music in Lungs is like so diverse and so experimental. There's like a really cool balance happening. So you have like the power of her voice and like some cool instrumental stuff happening on the side as well. And it kind of resulted in like this really wonderful, catchy balance. And so yeah, that's Lungs and why I love that. And Ceremonials. This is actually the first time I've listened to Ceremonials all the way through. I'm familiar with Shake It Off, and very familiar with
Shake It Out.
Oh, Shake It Out. That's the Taylor Swift song.
Yeah.
Shake It Out, I'm familiar with. And Seven Devils, which was used heavily to promote season 2 of Game of Thrones. So I know that song backwards and forwards. And Ceremonies, it's very different from Lungs, extremely different. Her voice, I think, does take center stage in this album. And the instrumentals, as massive as they are and as cool as they are, they do kind of become texture in a way. And I don't mean that like in a bad way or that they're like disappearing, but they do kind of serve more as a texture to what she's doing. And so I didn't find this album to be as diverse or as catchy as Lungs. But I do appreciate what's happening, especially like after a closer listen and kind of understand, like, you know, reading some interviews with her and stuff, because it kind of became clear like what the album is all about, and it got me like really excited when I found out about it and listened closelier to the instrumentals. For one thing, it's very ballad driven, which is interesting. The instrumentals are like sort of this like really epic combination of gospel and goth and Britpop like U2, and it has like a hymnal quality from like sort of choir elements, like basically the oddest church service you've ever been to. And it kind of sets it up to be something kind of spiritual, and it's not just the instrumentation that's like that. It's there are very overt themes of salvation and redemption and rebirth and sin and exorcism and revelation, conflicts between chaos and control. I mean, there's songs about demons, which is Seven Devils. There's songs about like spirits, which is breaking down, and death from What the Water Gave Me. So it's very spiritual. It has a lot of religious iconography used as like a metaphor to capture all of the emotion that she's like bombarded with as she experiences like things like loss and love and breakups and everywhere in between. And I kind of find this it's funny to kind of talk about this and sort of compare it to Chuck and I talked about Kanye's latest album, Jesus is King. And I kind of feel like it's sort of the same thing where you're trying to like make like pop music out of like a church service, you know, kind of using the same elements as like religious elements like gospel and choir and hymnal to like illustrate metaphors of like relationships and things like that. This is, I think, better. I think she did it better than Kanye did. But I will say I loved it up until like maybe the last 4 songs. And I feel like because that's where the theme kind of breaks, because this sounds really pretentious, but I wrote it down anyway. It's like going from Joy Division to New Order at the end, because it becomes more poppy and like upbeat and friendly. But I was kind of enjoying the goth odyssey that I was on, so I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the break at the end. But it's still pretty good, still catchy and fun. I liked the darkness at first. But overall, I liked it. I respect what she was trying to do. I think it's very memorable in its like themes, and I think it's definitely going to kind of go down as sort of like her. Well, I don't have to listen to the other albums, so I don't know if I can't make this like definitive. But I feel like it'll go down as like her deep cut album. You know what I mean? Like Lungs is sort of like your catchy poppy kind of thing that with all the hits on it. Ceremonials is gonna like is like her deep cuts, if that makes sense.
It's her Pinkerton. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it feels like something.
Album.
It feels like something that like an album made for an audience that she carved out herself. If that makes sense. Mm. Meanwhile, I think Lungs will like send her kids to college.
Yeah. So the version that you guys listened to, was it the 16 track that included Remain Nameless, Strangeness and Charm, and Bedroom Hymns, or just Up to Leave My Body?
I listened to the one that was 16 track.
Ooh, I listened to Up to Leave My Body. I listened to the 12-track one, not the deluxe one. I was listening to the deluxe one because I didn't.
No, that's fine. I didn't even realize I was looking at the track list as you were speaking and trying to catch like what the last 4 songs were.
Oh,
and I was like, wait, the last 4 songs like aren't even on this album. What's happening? But it's the other 4 songs. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Ceremonials. Really enjoyed it. Thought it was a cool album.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense to me, and I wonder if that's an effect. I don't know enough about bands writ large to be able to say, but I wonder if that's something that happens with sophomore albums where you kind of do your thing, and then with your second album you kind of say you kind of play to your bass a little bit more.
Yeah,
and I think maybe common. That's where it's like you say, oh, what people really liked about you try to guess what people really liked about Lungs in some ways. I mean, obviously you're an artist, and so you create what you want to create because that's where your creative energy comes. It's not all about marketing, but like it definitely. I think that the step from Lungs to Ceremonials does. I think, as you pointed out, you do see a bigger confidence for the band in Florence Welch as the voice of the band. And I mean, obviously they called themselves Florence and the Machine, so she was always the front. But like, she is featured. Her vocals are the thing in this album. Yeah, and everything else is created to support that. And you would think that the people who are returning as fans and looking forward to the second album are going to be there because they were really excited about the sound that they were hearing from her voice. That sounds like the calculation that she or the band made together as they were putting together this album.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're talking about like bands writ large. I'm trying to think of
Nirvana.
Yeah, well, I was thinking like the indie music scene, like things I'm thinking of are like, okay, so Starflyer 59, which is this shoegaze rock band, Christian rock band for Tooth and Nail. They had their first album, I think it's She's the Queen. Yeah, it's also known as Silver, was very well received. And then their second was called Gold. And it was one of those ones where when it came out, the fans who liked Silver were not as strongly interested in Gold. It's grown over time, but it was definitely much more the introspective, the kind of music they wanted to make a little bit. I'm thinking of Pinkerton. I made the comment about Pinkerton. Like so many people were disappointed when Pinkerton first came out because that's Rivers Cuomo's like passion project, and everybody loved the Blue. I mean, the Blue album is like one of those ones where every single song is good. Yeah. A similar thing happened with Third Eye Blind. Their self-titled debut was a monster, and then their follow-up, like Blue, I think it's called, or something like that, was like not nearly as well received. By the masses, but it was clearly, when you listen to it, it was what they were wanting to do as artists. So I'm wondering, I mean, obviously Ceremonials, I don't think from what I've read, it doesn't suffer that same kind of thing where people are like, oh, this is garbage, like what happened, that first album was so good. But it does seem to follow that pattern where the first album is this one where the band is trying to make it, and so they're firing on all cylinders. They're really trying to hit where like every track is something really special and stands out. But then once they've made it, the second album is one where it's a little bit more, we can take some risks. We can do some things that are a little more introspective or whatever. We're trying to to be a little more creative or something. I mean, I don't know, but because like listening to the way you talk about Lungs, JP, versus this sounds to me like there's somewhat of that sense of the thing that you loved about Lungs is not recaptured in the second album.
Yeah, I don't.
It doesn't
think
mean
it
it's
really
bad.
was.
It's just not the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that that introspection turn kind of happens in their third album, which is called How Big, How Beautiful, How Blue. How Blue, How Beautiful. How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful. It's a quieter album. So it feels like they went bigger for their second album. Florence went bigger for the second album, and then scaled it back.
Okay.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, and I think I'm just thinking of like, what happens with, the challenge with all musicians is how do you do stuff that, one, as an artist, keeps you interested and engaged. That's also going to be something that you're going to want to sing night after night. That you're also, it's like Guster. Going back to Guster is a good example. They're a band that, they put out more or less 3 albums with a very distinct sound, 2 acoustic guitars and the drums. And then after that, they started mixing with the format and, to varying degrees of returns. But it shows that they were willing to step outside of that box and that, instead of just sort of like reproducing the same album over and over again. And that's one of the things about being a professional musician. Like, I just don't envy any artist, because how do you do it? Like, how do you produce something that, like I said, that keeps you engaged and energized as an artist, but is also something that the fans who like something that you've probably moved past and grown past as an artist is what they really want. That's just such a crazy thing. It's like, it has really nothing to do with this album. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it's definitely something like I think about too as like a filmmaker. They kind of do the same thing where it's like, I mean, what was Quentin Tarantino going to do after making Pulp Fiction? He went like the total opposite way and just made Jackie Brown.
Right.
Then he'd like disappear for 10 years because of it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that is a kind of a tricky thing they have to deal with. Luckily, we just get to talk about it. So.
Yep.
All right.
Well, and I think any to just talk about Florence the Machine. I mean, like, you would be so lucky if you follow up a well-received debut album with something that sounds as good as Ceremonials.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to believe that that's. So you said this is their second album. Like, this is their second thing. I mean, that's
studio.
I mean, it's a very mature sounding thing for a second studio album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, crazy. Especially like I didn't really get to do much research in like the numbers and stuff and behind the scenes stuff, but Lungs was probably popular enough where she could like write a blank check for her next one. She could probably do whatever she wanted. So it's something like a kind of go all out sort of album in that regard. So let's start with "Shake It Out," which is the big hit on the album, right? That's kind of like the big single,
right?
What did you guys think of that song? Can you go first, Father Fun?
Well, yeah, I'll go first. I think there's a reason why it's a hit. It's catchy. I think that it, I don't know. I was listening today to a podcast where they were talking about something I hadn't heard before, but it's called solar punk, which is like steampunk or cyberpunk, but it's like this movement, emergent science fiction movement subgenre that is focused on kind of hopeful imaginings of the future, as opposed to cyberpunk being about like, oh man, like what's technology going to do to us? Yeah, exactly.
Oh, let's solar. I could get into this. Sorry.
Solar punk. I mean, there's probably a whole episode, and we probably need to read some stuff. But like, all I say is it was a fascinating conversation. I even like texted the podcast to my bishop and said like, hey, you should probably read this, or listen to this. But the idea being like, I feel like we're a world. We've been in a world for like, well, since 9/11, like at least, and probably longer, where we're just like starved for hope, and I think that "Shake It Out" is powerful because it's somebody saying like, I've been there and I know it gets better, and it's an interesting thesis for the album though, because you see, even though she kind of starts with that, like you can then see like even after that proclamation of "Shake It Out," like she then goes down into the depths of like despair and sadness and breakups and all that kind of stuff, but to me it is kind of like the thesis of the album. and speaks to that hope.
Yeah, I really loved it. This is the one where I might have got a little misty eyed. It's the first album in Music Mayhem to do that. And it's funny because I was actually on my second listen of the album as sort of I cycled through. And also, it's kind of funny, like you mentioned how it goes from the sort of uplifting to the next one. We were going to talk about The Water Gave Me is kind of dark and gothic. The album is kind of cyclical in that way, you know. But yeah, I mean, I love Shake It Out. It's uplifting. It's cathartic. The part that where she hits on dawn, it's always the darks before the dawn. Like the song really picks up. That always kind of gives me chills, especially if it's like really loud. And I love the lyric. And I'm done with my graceless heart. So tonight I'm gonna cut it out, and then restart.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool symbolism of like rebirth and salvation.
You know, when you're talking about that, when you mentioned that lyric, like I got chills. But it also made me think about one of our early conversations. I think when I was in Florida, when we were talking about like nostalgia and stuff, and how like we want to just like be what's this? Was it our conversation or something? But one of the things I've been thinking about lately is like how when you're younger, you kind of end up being defined by what you hate instead of by what you love, right? It's like when you're in high school, or some of us in high school, it's like, you know, I didn't even have the balls to say like I was into The Crow, right? But I would say like I hated pop music, right? I don't like that. I am who I am because I don't like that thing, you know. But I see that kind of cynicism is just really infectious in my life, and sometimes in my friend groups where like, you know, text threads or whatever. Or like I go to a gathering of clergy, or I'm at like a conference or something, and like I'm texting people about it, and I get into these spirals of just like hate isn't the right word, but like negativity, I guess, and cynicism, and I really like that line because I feel that sometimes, like my heart, because of who I am and because of my brokenness, my fallenness, you know, to get theological, like I lack grace sometimes, and sometimes maybe the best decision is just to cut it out and restart, right? And say that tomorrow there's a new dawn, you know.
Yeah, it's talking about the negativity thing, Patrick, just to get a little inside baseball since JP's dealing with two Episcopal priests. I have one of my little pet theories is that one of the problems we have in the Episcopal Church is that we've spent like 20, 30 years defining ourselves by what we're not, rather than talking about what we are. You know, we're not like these Christians. We're not like these Christians. You know, we're made up of so many people that have come from other denominations, you know, sort of pissed off. But yeah, but you talk about like the youth thing, you know, when you're a teenager, you tend to define yourself by what you hate. I was just trying to think a little bit, and I don't know that I did that. I don't say that to try to like brag or anything like that. I think that like the music that I was into, I just liked it. But I also hated popular music. So like that was definitely there too. But it wasn't like I didn't listen to MXPX because I hated NSYNC. It was, I just sort of objectively felt MXPX was better. But anyway, yeah, but I agree also with that sentiment too, that as a world, it's important. I think it's important for us to sometimes to just shake it off, just knock that crap off, and to get out. I know that diminishing my involvement in social media has made me a much happier person. And I think that, yeah. Sorry,
cool.
I'm just
no, that's good. So yeah, Shake It Out, great song about restarting, about sort of, you know, themes of rebirth.
And I love the way that I love the way that the vocal play that she does with the shake it out like that. It sounds like shaking. Like that's just I don't know. It's just a fun, playful thing.
Onomatopoeic.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the songs with like just like wicked percussion, right? Like heavy drums. It kind of like builds the energy of the song. Cool. Ready to move on?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into a little two-parter here. Start off with What the Water Gave Me. This is probably the most goth song on the album. I did a little research. I don't know if you knew this, but inspired by Virginia Woolf and how she committed suicide by putting stones in her pockets and walking into the water. Apparently she went to her house because it's like a museum now, and this is like that's where she came up with the song. So like
I mean, I definitely got that. Yeah. No, I whenever I think about like, I don't have enough cultural competency to know about Virginia Woolf putting stones in her pockets, but I heard the Stones and I was thinking about the about Pink Floyd on the Animals album. Is it the Dogs that talks about like being tied to stones and being dragged under the water?
I don't really know anything about Pink Floyd. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I almost picked Pink Floyd, and my wife prevailed upon me that I needed to pick Florence the Machine because I really love Pink Floyd. Okay, I'm gonna put Pink Floyd on the wheel of mayhem.
Oh, great! Because then I can talk about Mark Dyer's son John, who was obsessed with Pink Floyd.
No, I mean I don't know, but no. What were you saying about Pink Floyd? How it reminded you of?
I don't. There's a song on the Animals album with that talks about the dogs in this Animals album are being killed, and the way they're being killed is that their owners have tied rocks to them and are throwing them in the water and drowning them.
God.
So I got the imagery, but it wasn't because
that's not uncommon. I've known people doing that.
Yeah,
that's not.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, and I think I think it's a couplet with the next song, but this yeah, it's definitely a suicide type of song, but it's about surrender. It's about kind of despair. Like I love the imagery of her comforting Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that the world's a beast of a burden. You've been holding on for so long, but also kind of like acknowledging that the water, it is giving you something, right? Like there's something. Is it release? Is it freedom? You know, the ships rust in the water, but by sinking under the water and letting it kind of wash over you, you're getting something out of it, even if it's a death.
Yeah, I mean, water is sort of chaotic, but it also lets you surrender yourself to like just to kind of get, you know, when you let it wash over you, it's like it's suddenly peaceful. That sort of dual nature of water that like Bruce Lee talks about, you know.
Yeah, and these two songs, like the lyrics, particularly this one, it makes me, and as we're talking about, it makes me think of a musician who I really, really love is Jenny Lewis, and the title, the first track on the Voyager album from 2014 is called Head Underwater. And there's this lyric, it's like at the end of the song, she's like, I put my head underwater, baby. I held my breath and let it pass. And I realized it's like over the years of listening to it, I sort of initially thought of it as like, oh, it's a song about, you know, putting cold water in your head and freshening up, and like, oh, no, this is about somebody drowning themselves. So one, it makes me wonder, like, what are women musicians going on in the early 2000s to be singing about drowning themselves? But it also captures that sense of release that comes with this, which of course, I mean, the idea of her comforting Atlas in this song, it makes me think of Jonah and Jonah's song, and Jonah's, you know, the song of Jonah when he jumps overboard and he goes to the roots of the mountains and he's there at the foundations and he's talking about the Leviathan and, you know, he's talking about all this stuff that's down there, and it's, you know, and then ultimately the fish rescues him. But there's that echo of being there, you know, she's the bottom of the ocean. So it's almost like being, you know, close to Atlas because he's at the base holding everything up. Just, I don't know, just saw that little connection there.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm interested too in this idea of like what we seek when we're, you know, grieving or overburdened or, you know, in our current age, like overstimulated, is just some silence, you know?
Oh yeah.
And like that's what she really, like, that's the song, like its highest points are her just saying like, the only sound is the overflow, right? Like the sound of the water just kind of like on you, and I think about my kids when they take baths, like they love going under the water. They love putting their ears under the water and then like, hearing how my voice sounds. And then I like pretend like I'm talking, but I'm not actually talking. And they just think it's the funniest and coolest thing to like be insulated in that way. And I think like water is such an evocative imagery. Earlier, Chuck, you were talking about baptism and like,
yeah.
And I can't remember, maybe you can tell me, but like I've been talking about how in seminary I heard from somebody, I was in some class or something. I think it was a practicum maybe. But we were talking about like how much water do you need for baptism? And whoever it was who was talking said enough to drown in. It was like, can you do it? If you sprinkle, does it have to be immersion? Whatever. That was the question. But they just said,
sounds like Roger
as long
Furlow.
as it's enough to drown in. Yeah, it's enough to drown. Enough to drown in is like, what's that about? Well, that's Romans 6. Like that baptism is. Like we get it wrong when we think about baptism. If we're being good Pauline scholars, right? We get it wrong if we talk about baptism as like a washing or like a bath. Like that's not what it is. It's a burying. It's a death. Like in Romans, Paul talks about how we go under the water and die, and we are buried with Christ in a death like his. And then when we emerge from the water, we come to life in a resurrection like his. And that's so the imagery is like literally a new life, like going back into the waters, like we come out of water, right? In our mother's womb, we go back, we get to go down to the water and we are born again. And that's what, born again is about.
Well, and that's what
she's seeking here. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what what I tell families when we're preparing for baptism, one of the things I tell them is that, in some of the early churches that we've unearthed, baptisms took place in a separate room. There's an actual baptismal room, and they were octagonally shaped. And even a lot of baptismal fonts are still octagonal, right? In their, and the reason for that is Greek mausoleums and columbaria and other things like that were in octagonal shapes. It's a symbol of death. It's a symbol of a cemetery of burial. And then there would be this pool that was enough to squat down that your head would be completely underwater. So you would get naked, and you would possibly be slathered in oil, and then you would be completely submerged in a ritual drowning. That's what I told them. It's ritual drowning. That's what baptism historically and traditionally is seen to be. You would come out naked, and then they would give you a white alb as your new garment of clothing to wear. And it's also, as a side note, how we know that there were at least women deacons who assisted in baptism, because it would not have been appropriate for a male priest to be, bathing a naked woman in a private room. But yeah, so that we've lost that imagery. Growing up, I was fully immersed as a Baptist. That's how I was baptized. I was completely submerged in like a jacuzzi. It's called a baptistry, but it was up in the church, and it was basically a jacuzzi. But like, when we're looking at, sprinkling the water, or like, oh my God, I saw a picture of a Catholic, I want to say as a Catholic priest. They were doing a baptism during COVID-19, and he was squirting the baby with a water gun. Which, what a violent image that I just don't. I know that ritual drowning is a violent image too, but there's something different about a gun shooting a baby. But it's ritual drowning in the arms of the church, right? Right.
The personification of the church.
Right. Touch is kind of crucial in this. But yeah, it's like if you read the Didache says that like the preferred, there's like a hierarchy. It's like hierarchy of the kind of water that you need for baptism, and the preferred one is cold living water. Basically, like get in a cold waterfall to be baptized, to be completely like submerged and covered by it.
I always talk about that part of the Didache though in the other way, to like give us permission to also sprinkle, because the thing I love about that. I just love, like, that Didache, that part of the Didache feels so Anglican to me. I'm sorry, JP, that we went off on this tangent.
It's
but
okay.
Like, it feels so Anglican to me because it's like under a waterfall. That's how you should do it. But if there's no flowing water, still is fine. And if there's no cold water, warm is fine. As long as you say Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. If you can't do immersion, then even just sprinkling is fine. As long as you say Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It's just like these gradations, like you said, gradations of like worseness, but it's still baptism, right?
Yeah,
and that's what it is.
It makes me think of Cana's favorite thing in the Book of Exodus, where she's like, this is like a perfect encapsulation of way like Jewish legal, like the legal rituals and stuff work. It's like you shall consume all of the lamb before sundown or whatever, and then it's like if there's any left over.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, for listeners who don't know what we're talking about, the Didache, or Didache, is a book of the Bible, a book that almost made it into the Bible. It's the fancy word for the teaching of the 12 apostles. It's a worship manual. And so, for those of you who think that proper New Testament type worship involves sipping a latte while listening to a rock band and then, some like cruise director prattle on for 45 minutes, you should read the Didache, and it'll show you what an actual ancient church service was like.
And now Charles is going to go tear out his graceless heart so that he can cut it out and then restart.
Yes, exactly.
So, sorry, JP, I was moderating, but you haven't had a lot to say. We haven't given you a chance to talk about what the water gave me. I'm interested what you think.
Well, like I said, I think it's definitely the most goth.
Right.
Mainly because it definitely is sort of overt in its themes of suicide and drowning. The crow, yeah. This is the part where I put them. I mean, when I listened to this, I started putting the makeup on in the mirror, and I don't know. You guys kind of covered everything that I was gonna say, but it's fine. Like I didn't have like anything totally different from what you guys said. Just that I did think it was kind of interesting in that like water is sort of traditionally symbolic of like rejuvenation, what baptism is supposed to be. You're coming back to life, and here she's sort of fascinated with the idea of drowning and how it takes life, and how water sort of represents chaos. And it's also kind of a theme throughout the entire album of like being caught up in chaos and just wanting it to end. So I thought that was interesting how she kind of comes up with her own sort of symbolism as to what water represents to her. I think that's cool. So
yeah, and it transitions into the second song in here of like, what does it actually look like if you surrender to it? And then in that silence and in the arms of the ocean, and now I'm speaking about Never Let Me Go.
Right, as I was saying, we say it's Never Let Me Go that we're talking about now.
Yeah, that's where it gives way to the devotion, that there's a spiritual experience of surrender to kind of what you're in.
Right.
And what I like about it is that she starts out the song like in the middle of the thought because it's connected to the previous song, and even as she's looking up, she's seeing like the mirror reflection of what she left, and it's all still exists, right? But that down in the ocean, at least, there's that silence that she's been looking for, that is going to be able to like carry her from this point.
Yeah, I wrote down the chorus. In the arms of the ocean are carrying me, and all this devotion was rushing out of me, and the crashes are heaven for a sinner like me, but the arms of the ocean delivered me. It's very hymnal, and how it's like that could be like a hymn,
Yeah, I mean, and it's peaceful in a deep cathedral where you cannot breathe. No need to pray, no need to speak. Now I am under all. I mean, that one, using a cathedral for like the ocean is an interesting image, because cathedrals are sort of well known to be evocative of the primordial forest. But this idea of like a big empty space, and what that can represent. I remember when every year my friend Josh and I would go to this toy collectible show at the convention center in Orlando. And it's like this big thing, Florida Extravaganza, big nerd thing. People dress up. You meet, like we met like David Prowse and stuff, and this guy played Darth Vader. But when we park and we'd walk through, we walk past the empty. The Orlando Convention Center is a very beautiful building, by the way. I love the way it's just one of my favorite architectural things in the world. But you can walk through this overwalk that has like glass, and you can see into the empty convention spaces, and they're massive cavernous spaces. And I remember my friend Josh, we were walking, he said there's something unsettling to me. There's something kind of terrifying about like it's such a big empty space like that. And it's weird because I get that, but I weirdly find like comfort in that, like the idea of being able to be in a big, dark, empty space. Like there's just something, I don't know, it's interesting. It's otherworldly, and you almost like feel a presence through the absence. So it's an interesting, evocative image here that I just sort of connect with this idea of the vast open ocean being a cathedral.
Well, and I wonder if that's something that is connected to your surfing, because like that's the fear that I have about the ocean, is like that it's so big and there's so much of it, and it's so that the emptiness is actually not emptiness because it's totally full, but it's a similar feeling of anxiety, I guess.
Yeah, it's called
it's weird.
Thalassophobia.
Right.
It's a fear of the ocean's vastness and what may lurk deep within it.
See, yeah, I mean, like, so back when I first visited Hawaii in September, we walked on the Makapu Trail around the eastern tip of Oahu, and you see the ocean. Like you're up on a mountainside, and it's a cliff right over the ocean, and it's just vast and blue, and it's like you're very aware how far away you are from other people. And the weird thing is that like it was sort of jarring when I first saw it and started entertaining the idea of living here. But what's been weird for me is that since moving here, I oddly feel very connected with people. I feel this very weird connection with like people, with sort of the earth itself, because I guess being just this little blip in the middle of a vast ocean, you're so susceptible to so many things, and different things that are outside of your control. And to be experiencing that in the midst of a pandemic, like I just sort of feel this weird spiritual connection. Like it's almost like it's the heart of the world in this weird way. And I don't know if that's like my own like latent narcissism because I'm here. It's the most important place ever. But getting back to the surfing thing, I mean, obviously anything that's talking about the ocean crashing, the idea of the crashing is like heaven to me. I mean, as a surfer, I hear that and like, oh yeah, I totally get that.
So like maybe the ocean's sort of like an afterlife sort of being presented, because you know she's drowned and now she's in an afterlife, and sort of she's more peaceful and she doesn't want the ocean to let her go, or I don't know, a weird kind of rebirth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I see this is it's almost like the previous song, you know, is this Virginia Woolf retelling of what happened and sort of imagining, you know, what was going on with Virginia Woolf and this very poetic thing. And this idea of, you know, basically suicide. This song then sort of interprets that in a spiritual sense and makes all these really rich baptismal connections that I'm not even sure if Florence herself is aware of. This is where like Death of the Author becomes kind of fun, because like those of us who are shaped, you know, like for me, like baptismal Christian, you know, baptismal faith with, you know, surfing, like I'm going to hear this song and these words very differently than, you know, probably both of you. And like to see the idea that though it's dark, and the idea of even like baptism symbolizing a ritual drowning is a darkness to it, that it leads to this idea of peace and hope and a new way of life. Like that's how I come away with it, is the idea that, you know, I mean, once I, you know, what is it? It's Jesus who says, right, that, is it Jesus or Paul, Patrick, that says that, like, it's Paul, when you're dead, you don't sin anymore. Like, so that whole conversation around being dead to sin. And so this idea of, and the crashes are heaven for a sinner like me, the arms of the ocean delivered me, that notion that you're dead to whatever's come before. And so like this might be taken to a more literal place, but we can see it as a spiritual idea that once you're dead to what's come before, it has no sway, it holds no power over you anymore. You've been delivered. And then in which case it's sort of like the Jonah story. he drowned, but the fish, which God sent, some people see it as punishment, but actually the fish is what delivered him to be able to do what he was supposed to do, even though he's a bitter bastard about it even afterward. But, then that language is picked up by Jesus and used as illustration in the Gospels. I don't know, I'm drafting a sermon now, so I'll stop. But
okay. All right, so the next one is we're going to No Light, No Light, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing I love about No Light, No Light, and I don't know if it was because of where I mentioned, 3 years into a marriage that I felt this when I was 3 years into my job, that you're kind of, they always say that in parish ministry, 3 years in, you kind of are destined to kind of have some bumpiness, because everybody's kind of heard your sermon. They're kind of sick of your thing. And they realize that you're human, and that they can push you and kind of have learned what your buttons are and everything. And I remember we're better now. we're still married now, but I can remember 3 years into my marriage with Michael that I would listen to this song and I would completely and totally understand what Florence Welch was talking about, because it's it to me, it's this great song about you are the most important thing in my life, and yet we fight all the time, and we're not, and when we fight, you want to seek a resolution, but it's not going to come. You want a revelation, some kind of resolution that's not going to happen. That this is a conversation that I can't have right now in my current state. And the entirety of the lyrics just worked for me. It also helps that Michael has blue eyes, right? So it's I never do no light in your bright blue eyes. I never knew daylight could be so violent. I just love it, and it also it just rocks too.
Yeah,
she's just it is a very powerful song.
It's got some aggression to it.
Yeah,
a lot of rhythm. Interesting. I don't know. I reading into it myself, I kind of saw it as feeling vulnerable at the thought of sort of opening yourself up. You get to a point into a relationship where it's okay, we gotta kind of I gotta know who you are. You can't just have this sort of, superficial ideas of one another. We have to we got to start revealing ourselves. We got to start opening up. We got to start revealing things from our past. And I just kind of see a huge conflict of that, because one of the lyrics that really stood out to me was, "I never knew daylight could be so violent." The idea of being exposed and just it rattling you,
like Midsummer, right?
Oh boy. Talk about being exposed.
In terms of lyrics, this again, a song I didn't spend a whole lot of time with, so I'm not going to say much. But this lyric in the very beginning, "You are the hole in my head, you are the space in my bed." First reading, hearing that, there's the idea that space is referring to an absence, you were there but you've left. But looking at the context of it, the way she's singing about this, "You are the silence in between what I thought and what I said." That's a presence. You've said something, but you're not speaking back. So this idea that you are the space in my bed, like you said, Patrick, those first 3 years of marriage are tough, right? And because that's kind of true for everyone, I think. And in those beginning stages, this other person is just sort of this vessel, right? They're sort of a void, because you're still learning about them. And one of the mistakes a lot of people make in relationships, and I know I did this for most of my life, is to see the other person as sort of as though they're supposed to be a receptacle for whatever I'm trying to give to them. And instead of being a full person themselves, and that I have to receive what they're giving too, and we have this back and forth. It's not love is not a one-way exchange. And with the very kind of misogynistic world I grew up with, it was that sense that that's how it was supposed to be, right? I'm the man, I'm in charge, and I'm going to tell you what to do and how to behave. And so I just think that's such a rich lyric to the idea that that there could actually be a presence, a person next to you, but they're a void because you're not letting them be what they're fully supposed to be. Anyway, that's just sort of how I'm taking the lyrics.
I also think it's one of the catchier ones on there too. Like the chorus about bright blue eyes.
It's another one where I can, like, at the concert, like, I can really remember the light show that was happening, because this is another one where it's like it starts out really soft, and then it's like no lie, and like the flashing, like, epileptic kind of thing that was happening. Nice. It was awesome.
Props to that light, Daddy.
Yeah.
That's a nice callback.
Tell us about Seven Devils, JP.
Nice. Oh, I love it. I love this song because there's so much, like, there's so, leading up to this, there's so much of sort of this conflict going back and forth between chaos and control, needing salvation and rebirth and all, and everything like associated with that. But then Seven Devils comes, and it's just like anger and fury and wrath. The lyrics are like, I don't want your money, I don't want your crown, I've come to burn your kingdom down.
Yeah. I here's a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this was heavy promotion of the second season of Game of Thrones.
Correct. Yes.
Seems very prophetic to the finale.
Oh yeah. Because that's what happened.
Right.
That's what happened.
Right. I just wanted to.
Yeah. This is definitely, like, they definitely chose it because of that sort of imagery that it's creating about the second season. The second season was all about vengeance because of what happened in the first season. Ned Stark got his head cut off, and of course, Daenerys Targaryen was getting closer to Winterfell, or not Winterfell. No, what am I talking about? Westeros. She's coming. She's saying she's gonna, like, destroy everything when she gets there. But that's, I mean, and that's the nature of the song to me. It's just like, holy water can't help you now. It's just sort of this idea of wanting to, like, cause, like, pain without any kind of worry of consequences. In my research, because I was interested in, like, kind of what her process was in the song, and she described it as an exorcism. About, like, self-doubt and guilt, and of course the battle between chaos and control, which is what I just said. It's kind of funny. So it's just sort of like taking this attitude of, like, leave no ground unscorched, and trying to, like, take control. Like, I'm done giving in, I'm done compromising, I'm just gonna do what I want to do.
Anytime we hear about devils and demons, like, you think about Jesus, and I think that the number 7 is really important here as well, because, like, that's one of the only things we really, like, know about Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, I wrote that
was
down
that
too.
she had 7 demons cast out of her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, like, I hear it a little differently, in that I hear it as like, yes, it's comforting to kind of, like, be with your demons and to hold your demons and to use them for purposes of rage and destruction. But there's also a recognition of, like, I'll be dead before the day is done. Like, if I keep this up, if I let these things continue to control me, not only am I going to destroy you in my anger or my rage, but, like, I'm at risk as well. And that's what the demon, that's the power that demons have over us, especially if you have 7 of them inside you.
Well, I see that's okay. That's kind of blowing my mind a little, because, like, when I think 7 devils, I think of the 7 deadly sins, and I thought that was just sort of what it's playing off of, is the different the 7 deadly sins,
not the 7 kingdoms of Westeros.
No,
okay.
Though who knows? Maybe they knew. But But you making the connection with Mary Magdalene is very fascinating, especially considering that in Renaissance art, Mary Magdalene was always depicted as a red-headed woman. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if Florence is drawing off of that imagery for herself in this.
Probably. Oh, I'm sure she is. There's one of the songs at the end of the album that I listened to. Sorry, I need to look up the lyrics again. It's called Bedroom Hymns. It also has a little bit of that, and this is where we get a little bit explicit, but like this isn't in the version you listen to, but the lyrics of this one, it's called Bedroom Hymns, and it's got this. If you can look up the lyrics, you should. It's got a very overt Eucharistic imagery. This is his body. This is his blood. Such selfless prayers I can't get enough. I'm here for absolution. I'm not here looking for absolution, but I found myself an old solution. And it's a very sexual song, and it's got this very I don't know if it's like African drum beat, African rhythm, like a churning, like dum 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 kind of drum beat to it. But how it begins is, this is as good a place to fall as any. We'll build our altar here. Make me your Maria. I'm already on my knees. You had Jesus on your breath, and I caught him in mine, sweating our confessions, the undone and the divine. And then it's like, because this is his body, this is his blood. It's like this, and so make me your Maria there, like that. You know, there's this, I think, incorrect like feeling of Mary Magdalene being a prostitute, right? That's one of the kind of like understandings and translations we have of her and who she is. And this like, make me your Maria, I'm already on my knees, like, and that the bed becomes this altar, like I think that there's connection there to Seven Devils as well.
Yeah, it's sort of like Madonna's Like a Prayer.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a good one.
And playing off of the literary motif of the two Marys, right? There's the mother or the whore, like women are forced into one of those two roles in Western literature.
So actually Spectrum was the one that reached the highest on the UK charts as far as a song.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think I really like it. I like it because the story I told about it at the live concert, but I really like this idea of like this is one of the most pure like love songs on the album. It's definitely like a love ballad, but the line that holds the song together is "Say my name and every color illuminates. We are shining and we will never be afraid again." Like I just love that. I love that expression of love. Like it you know, you kind of handing off to somebody this power. You know, like. You know, I grew up for 30 years, you know, I'm how old am I? 37, almost 37 years, you know, and my parents have said my name since day one, right? But when Michael says my name, it means something different, right? And telling somebody that, like, when my mom says my name, it's something, right? But when you say my name, every color illuminates, you know, it's like, again, you know, we're talking about the Wizard of Oz, but like walking through into Oz and like, I kind of see the world differently because of who you are to me and the power that you kind of have in bringing me to life by calling me out or whatever, you know. I just love that. So it feels pure in a way that like the rest of the album there's like that like darkness undergirding stuff, you know. Like Spectrum just is, and it's also just loud and like raucous and rainbows, you know. Spectrum.
Yeah, this is the part of my notes where I said this: we've gone from Joy Division to New Order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's continuing the upbeat tempo that started from the previous one, which was Heartlines, which is, you know, a song that's all about like believing in yourself and all that.
All that.
I'm just saying, hey, you know, I enjoyed the dark grittiness of this album, and these are fine songs at the end. They're fine. But
you sound a little bit like the way people. This is a weird connection, but I've been thinking this through this entire conversation. So please, forgive me for this weird jump.
Okay.
But it makes me think of like people's reaction to Neon Genesis Evangelion, where it's like this heavy dark, very kind of beautiful psychological thing. And then the last 2 episodes are like they kind of hand wave everything that's come before, and the show ends on this very weird like yay note that just comes kind of quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like you're on the journey to that thematic jump. And it just so like the way you talk about this album just made me think about where you're like, this first part was great, and in the end it just got suddenly happy for me, and I didn't like the jump.
I don't know. I mean, this is probably a therapeutic for her. They're like, yeah, we went through this greatness. Can I be happy now? Thanks.
Yeah. or maybe the producer was like, Florence, we need some pep here.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's hopeful, and it's sort of kind of like cycling through the emotions of a relationship. The part that kind of caught me is how this is going to sound funny, but like the lyric, and when we come back, we'll be dressed in black, and you'll scream our names aloud, and we won't eat, and we won't sleep. We'll drag bodies from their graves. It's like a cycle of emotions. Like we start out like we go through this period of being angry and horrible. But also, like, so many other things are connected to it. You can't really have the other one without the other, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Of course, I found the one dark moment in the song that I zeroed in on immediately.
The crow is speaking.
I'm going to wipe all this makeup off. But no, it's a good song. It's one of the catchier ones. Yeah, no, I like it. Are you good? Do you feel like we've discussed enough about your album from your favorite performer band, Florence and the Machine?
Yeah, no, I think we did. I would recommend. I don't really like the how big, how beautiful, how blue, how beautiful, whatever it is. But the latest one, Highest Hope, just came out last year, and I really like it. It's definitely a lot more toned down. It's more of like an acoustic album in some ways, but it's still like her voice is so beautiful, and it's a little bit more autobiographical. It's definitely like if this is a early 20s album thematically, like her new one is definitely like a mid 30s album.
Okay.
And like she goes like there's songs about going back to her home outside London, and like I don't know, it's very good. So like if this piqued your interest in Florence the Machine, then I would recommend checking out her whole catalog. But her latest album is actually really good too.
Cool. Great. And I recommend definitely checking out Lungs. Fun album. Really, sure. Really fun one to have in the rotation. Especially you, Chuck. You should check it out.
Okay. I will check it out.
All right. So, real quick, I want to thank you, Father Fun, for recommending this album for this year. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great album. Florence the Machine is a great group. And so, yeah, thanks for recommending. Loved it.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me participate.
You little co-host there.
I'm so glad I got to talk about it.
And occasionally Matt has...
It was the best contribution you've had this whole Music Mayhem, so thank you.
Oh, we're gonna have words about that when the episode's done recording. But carry on. Go ahead.
Occasionally Matt is here, and he's going to tell us what we're going to be listening to for next week. Take it away, Matt.
I am, and I have to say, I had a rough time because JP said that he wanted to focus on favorite groups, so not so much like what's an album you want to talk about, but what's your favorite band? And I was like, well, crap, we already covered my favorite band and the album I would have picked to kind of sum up everything about them, which was the Beatles with Let It Be Naked. So I was like, well, okay, who's my second favorite thing that I want to talk about? And then we had our number one fan, Father Chuck. Our number one fan. Can you guess who it was?
My mother.
Your mother made a comment on a post, and I was so happy because I was like, I get to be her hero in so many ways. I couldn't be more excited because Father Chuck decided for his favorite band to pick Guster, and his own mother said, I will accept it because you've been talking about it for years, but basically, she's ashamed and disowned you because you didn't pick the Beatles or Michael Jackson. So I, being the amazing human being that I am, jumped in and said, oh, don't worry. Occasional Matt will make sure that that's taken care of for you, because my choice is not only an album from Michael Jackson, but features a song that features Paul McCartney from the Beatles. So I nailed it. So nice. We will be doing the 1982 album Thriller by Michael Jackson. And I have actually a lot to say about it, so I'm kind of excited. So we're going to go there. And
are we going to get canceled?
Probably.
No, listen, I'm going to end with this warning. Michael Jackson is super problematic. I'm very aware. But that's also, I'm hoping, going to lead into an interesting discussion from our moderator about art and the fact that it's freaking problematic, because I don't like Michael Jackson as a human being. But let's carry on. So, Michael Jackson's Thriller. That will be what we're listening to this week.
Excellent.
All right. And then the following week, it will be hashtag Masters of Divinity is over party.
All right. Michael Jackson's Thriller. Go out and listen to the pivotal album by Michael Jackson. Come back with us next week, and we'll talk all about it. And then afterwards, the Wheel of Mayhem awaits.
You know what? Go out and pirate it, because you don't need to support him. I'm okay with that. Go out and do it. It's fine.
He also owned the Beatles song catalog, so it all kind of
he did for a long time. I'm very aware. Yes, I know. So
cool. All right. So thank you so much for listening and for watching, everyone at home. Continue to stay safe. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, a review, all that good stuff. And we'll see you again next week as Music Mayhem continues. Good journey.
Good journey.
Journey.
Good journey.